I just love multiplayer. I'm a really competitive person, although you wouldn't know that necessarily to look at me or talk to me, but deep inside there's this fiery core of competitiveness that I can't stifle, and it comes out when I'm playing. The thing that's great about Destiny is that everything makes sense and feels cohesive in the world, right? Like, your Guardian is the same one that you're bringing to all these different places. It makes sense for us to bring that all together. Now, do we tie it up in too much fiction? No. We make the game really fun. We're making the game we want to play and make it awesome, and then we try and work it in and make it work within the fiction as well.
So pulling in those characters that you have in the single-player campaign, how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process of trying to make sure the things that you bring in, the shotgun that you found on a strike, for example, isn't going to completely clean house when you take it into competitive multiplayer. But we've got some really cool things that are going on behind the scenes that actually make it work.
Would you ever nerf a weapon in multiplayer?
I would never rule that out. However, we have some systems in place, so theoretically, if something is really good at one point, it could grow to become less good over time. And I don't really want to go into how we do that, but we have some really cool ideas about how we're going to handle those things.
Do you guys have an option in mind for like a stock multiplayer match?
There's currently nothing like that where you could just start up and then start playing multiplayer within the first 3 seconds. Once again, that's back to the you are your character in the world, and you're growing and changing over time, and that's really important to us.
Would you say the multiplayer matches are faster than in Halo games, or how would you compare the speed?
Definitely faster. If we're to talk about lethality, it's certainly more lethal than Halo. When you catch a guy with his pants down, you can take him out really quickly. And that's not even including using a heavy weapon or a super to do that. But generally, your primary assault class weapons are going to do a little more damage than what we had in Halo.
And what's the reason for that?
Combat resolution is fun, right? Getting into combat and having it end is fun. It's satisfying for both sides. And it's not all the time. You know, good players are still going to be able to get away some of the time, but it's a little harder now.
Do you want to explain the team's approach to health?
The caveat with anything sandbox related is that it's going to change, and it'll probably change before we ship. So you do have health and armor. And as your armor bleeds down, you know, you move into health and the squishy parts of the, you know, the human or guardian physique. It's pretty low, but it also depends on your class. So say the Titan is a tiny, tiny bit harder to kill. It's almost inconsequential in multiplayer, but each of the classes also has interesting attributes that you can, as you go further down your build trees, that, you know, you can give your Titan resistance while sprinting, for example. So I want the game to be fast and frenetic and fun, and let players come at combat opportunities in a variety of different ways. So one of the things that was really important to us is to give the player options in how they attack a player in the world. So you've got three-dimensional options as well. You've got your vertical movement mode, which lets you decide to either take the stairs to the second floor of this building, or, you know, double jump through this hole that's blown out in the wall to take a shortcut.
So I wonder, are there other things that separate a typical Destiny map from a Halo map?
That's interesting. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think hopefully when people look at the multiplayer maps in Destiny, they'll go, oh, this is a Bungie map. Like, I get it. Like, these guys have a certain design sensibility. You know, one of the maps you guys played on had some pretty big dynamic things that changed lines of sight dynamically and sort of consistently in a really cool way. But I feel like that's sort of a Bungie philosophy more than a Halo philosophy, I guess, if I had to pin it down to one thing. The really interesting thing is being able to bring your character across is really crazy. Like, it's one of those things that you think, whatever. But then when you play it, you create your class, you start at 0, right? And you're leveling up your character, and you're finding these new weapons, you're finding these new pieces of armor, you're going on these missions, you're doing cinematic story missions, you're doing some of our other activities. Your character is growing and changing, and then taking that character with you into multiplayer is a super satisfying experience.
So say somebody is only interested in the competitive multiplayer, and they play it for a year and a half, then does the rest of the game scale up to their level, or can they just jump to the end of the game and take out the final boss?
There are things that we're not ready to talk about yet that will that will push you around, and you'll want to increase your character level. So you won't want to just play multiplayer, but we're not talking about that yet.
Okay, but I'm sure there's a segment of your fan base that just wants the
Sure.
multiplayer. And so
Maybe. And the interesting, and the interesting thing about Destiny is that you know, because it is your character, and because you're doing all these other things, and because the way the world is put together, we want people to be moving around and trying these different things, and there will be many good incentives for them to do that.
I'm wondering how you approach customization to matches this time around with the cohesive world vision. That has to be a really tough balance.
That's a really good question. Not something that we're ready to talk about yet.
Is it theoretically possible to turn things like supers off though?
Everything's possible. It just depends on what we want to do. We have a really robust system for how we put together our playlist, just like we always had in Halo, and it's even beyond that now, I would say, in terms of what we are capable of doing, and in terms of how quickly and easily we can rearrange those things. So you can expect a similar cadence, if not faster in some cases, depending on what we're giving to people in terms of what they see and are able to play. Yeah, so nothing's out of the question, but yeah, there's certainly things we're not ready to talk about yet.
Split screen? Are you guys talking about supporting that?
I don't know if we're talking about that yet. One of the things that we are doing for the first time ever in Destiny, we're taking a different approach to voice chat. We know that not just in multiplayer, but in general, when you get into a game with someone that you don't know, or someone that you've never seen before, may never see again, and they have this power to completely destroy your entire experience and maybe ruin the game for you forever. And so what we're doing, instead of having that, you know, whatever that is, 1 in 10 chance possibility of someone ruining your game, we're effectively saying you only have voice chat to your fire team. And we're doing other things to let you communicate with other players. But it'll be interesting to see how people react to it, for sure.
So that desire to just have communication between smaller teams, does that influence the type of modes that you're building then?
Sure.
It's got to have a kind of a ripple effect to everything else, right?
It could. The interesting thing is how we control how many people are in your fire team before you go into these matches or anything, right? And we allow up to 6-player teams. And so you will be able to go into modes with your entirety of the team filled out with people that you have voice chat to. It's just that if you go in with less than the max number, matchmaking will automatically fill it out, but you won't have direct chat to them. That doesn't mean you won't ever have direct chat to them. So if you wanted to platform specifically say, hey, I really want to talk to this person right now, you could invite them to a platform specific party chat, like on, you know, Xbox 360 or whatever, or PS4 has voice chat. So it's easy for you to create those things. We're just trying to, by default, have people be more in a curated experience so they won't have their night ruined. I mean, we're super excited for people to play in the beta. I can't wait for people to get their hands on this game, because I mean, we're just getting started here. There's a lot. Like, the coolest thing about Destiny is that we're putting out the first game, but then we have a long time to continually iterate and grow the world, and I think it's going to be a really cool journey.